All right, welcome. I apologize. I've been presenting to myself, realizing I did not click the go live button. So I do apologize. So I'll start my presentation now for you. Please forgive me. I know you probably thought I wasn't coming. It's already 23 minutes into it. However, everyone will get the replay and yes, please, please, please forgive me. And I was so into it and realized, oh boy. Anyway, welcome. So I want to start with the fact that every child is. So we know today the presentation is on connecting with your non-speaking child. Okay, and let's start with every child is a communicator, right? Spoken words are only one way to share thoughts, as we know. Children, before they can even talk, they're showing you love. They're showing you, they're communicating with you. So words are not the way, the only way, and they're really not the first way that we communicate. Um, so this hour we'll talk about connection because everything starts with connection, right? We'll talk, and the tools that we'll cover work once trust and understanding are in place because that's the first thing. From the moment your child is born, they're looking to you to learn to trust, right? Because when they learn best when there is trust, when there is understanding, when there is connection, right? So you know your child better than anyone else, right? So what the tools that we're sharing tonight, they'll just add to what you're already doing. And again, forgive me for my tardiness. I hope you guys are still there. All right. So we'll talk about shifting your mindset, your understanding and connecting, communication tools, and then putting everything into practice. All right. So take a moment and just reflect. Think of a moment this week when your child clearly told you something without using words. What did they do? Right? Did they push you? Did they hug you? Did they slap you? Did they kiss you? Did they pull you to them? You know, did they push something away? Did they turn away? There's so many ways that we communicate. And being aware of how your child communicates is vital. So just take a moment and think about it and then try to notice that in your everyday life. Right? The screams, the tantrums, all of that, they're communication too. Like, I don't want this, stop this, or I'm not comfortable. I'm trying to say something, trying to communicate something, and you're not getting it, right? We're speaking a different language. So please just, yeah, take a moment, just write it down, and, you know, share it with your family members, right? With the people in your household so that you can be in tune with your child and the way that they're communicating, right? So we often talk about children being non-vocal, which implies that there are no words and nothing to say. However, when we think of non-speaking, it describes how your child communicates, right? They don't speak like in words, right? Um, does that make sense? I hope it does. Okay. So, language and speech, they're actually different skills, right? And we teach our children to we teach our children language, right? So there's receptive and expressive. So expressive is when they tell us, right? And again, it's not only through words, it could be through pictures, AAC, and just many different ways that a child can communicate. And there's receptive language. So what they're understanding, what they're able to decipher and decode. When you narrate what you're doing, it helps your child communicate because then they're learning, right? They're learning, okay, oh, I'm cleaning the whatever it is. So, oh, so when mommy's doing that, she's cleaning this thing. Or I'm doing this and mommy says I am, whatever it is. So just narrate what you're doing, narrate what they're doing. Yes, it's exhausting. However, if you do the hard work early on, it only gets easier later, right? I remember this one family I went to work with. The young man was non-vocal. Just his communication was tantrums, right? And tantrums work, right? Because if you do the thing that if you believe that your child is trying to get something and they get it every time they tantrum, you've taught them that tantruming is the best way, the quickest way, the most efficient way to get their needs met. So we want to be mindful that we teach skills to replace those tantrums, right? To replace that way of communicating so that your life is a lot less stressful and your child doesn't have to resort to a tantrum to communicate their needs and wants. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. All right. So the foundation is to presume competence. And what I mean by that, assume that your child can think and learn and understand, even if they have not shown you yet, even if you haven't seen any evidence, right? They don't have to prove it. Just believe that they do and believe that they can. And where my stance on this, there's the Pygmalion studies where, well, they studied and they called it the Pygmalion effect. And what that is what they found that teacher expectations, and that goes for parents as well, determines performance, right? It determines how well or not well a child performs. So what they did, they assigned a teacher to a classroom and told her that she was the best teacher. And because she was the best teacher, they're going to assign her the best students. And they told the students, because they're the best students, they're assigning them the best teacher. At the end of the school year, that classroom excelled. The students and the teacher, I mean, it was just superb. Everybody enjoyed learning, and it was just a beautiful thing. And then they were told they were randomly selected. So if you plant a belief in a child, there's no telling where they can go and what they can do, right? Sky is the limit. And to further drive this home, Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich, his son was born without any hearing mechanism, right? He didn't have ears, just skin. And when they did an x-ray, they found nothing inside to show, like no hearing, drums and all the things that are in our ear to help us hear. There was none of that. However, he told his child, he kept saying it from birth, you can hear, you can hear, you can hear. You are a hearing child and you will speak. And one day he saw his child with his head on there was music playing on this table and the child's head was on it so he could feel the beat. So, and then over time he started hearing and talking. He went to school and sat in front of the classroom and he could hear what the teachers were saying. They just had to raise their voices a little bit and he could hear everything that was being said. Over time, there was a company who developed hearing aids, and he actually became the spokesperson for that because that further enhanced his hearing. And again, remember, he had nothing. There was nothing to say that he was going to hear. And Napoleon Hill was like, "Listen, thank God I was that child's father because I believed and I implanted the belief in him that he could hear and he was going to hear, and he did." So. Just to show you the power of, right? That, because he always talks about the burning desire. So the power of a burning desire for his child to speak, and the child spoke. I'm not saying that's going to happen with everyone. I'm just letting you know that there's hope. These things have happened. And, sometimes it's about doing the really, really hard work early on so that and it gets easier later. And that hard work takes a lot of time and effort and intention and, with systems in place, right? So, and a plan in place, because without a plan, it's difficult to know where to go, what to do, because everybody should be on that same page in order for things to work well, right? It will be optimal. Right. Okay. So talk to your child at their age level, not below it. And I don't believe there's ever such thing as baby talk. I remember I was corrected when my children were growing up because I would do the oh blah 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 blah, and I was firmly corrected. It's like just speak to your child. And honestly, I did. And what studies have also shown too is the more you speak to your child, the better they do academically. It actually helps with reading later on and, just skill development with, the receptive and expressive skills. So just talk, 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 narrate, just keep talking. There's no such thing as too much talking. Um, Now, offer choices instead of doing everything for them. That doing things for your child that you can teach them to do does them a disservice. And I know it's faster for you to just do it. However, if you teach them to do it, when you teach them to do it, that's something you take off your plate later. Yes, in the beginning, it's going to take time. Yes, in the beginning, it will take work. However, you're also instilling confidence in your child. And a confident child will just keep going and growing, right? So they will try new things. They will try hard things and feel better about themselves for it, right? Because that I did it feeling, we never want to rob our child of that because we're too busy. It's going to take time. Because you're actually, when we do that, when we do things for them that we can teach our child to do, we're sacrificing their growth. And I know it sounds rough, but it's true, right? Um, Give your child extra time to process and respond, right? Silence is okay. Um, this is from my own life. My older son, Dre, I would tell him to do something, and then I tell him to do something, and then I tell him to do something before he even has time to process any of those things. And he would sway left and sway right and drop to the floor. And I would always go like, what is going on? And one day I asked him, like, Dre, why do you keep doing this? He's like, Mom, you told me to do so many things all at once, and I I just don't know what to do. So he just flopped to the floor. So which taught me to slow down, right? And wait and allow for processing time. Because when we allow our children to process the things, then they can respond. And we know a lot of our children, a lot of autistic children may have processing delays. So give them a moment to get get that understanding of things, to develop that. Right? Assume they understand more than they can show you, right? Because again, it takes a minute sometimes, and sometimes it may be a few minutes. I know for me, sometimes I'll hear something and it won't be for a while. It's like, oh my gosh, that's what that meant, right? So we all have it. However, I believe, and I actually had a conversation with somebody about this recently, we expect so much more from children than we ourselves can deliver. Right. And I'm going to use an example. I don't know if you're going to, like, it kind of relates in a way. So I was asked to do a presentation for a, a group of a daycare center company. And I went there and I thought, let me mimic what happens in this daycare center. So I got there early. But then when it was time, they called my name. I sat at the back of the classroom. I kind of snuck in so nobody would see me. So I sat at the back of the room behind a wall. And they called my name and they're like, oh, not sure if she's here. And I had them, they called me a couple of times. I was like, oh my goodness, I am here. Please forgive me, blah, blah, blah. And I had my first slide say, walk in, be frazzled, and all of that. So then they could see that it was planned. And so I took some time, got everything going, hooked up my computer for my presentation and the microphone and all the things. And I had a microphone. So after it was all done, I was like, okay, I'm ready, guys. Hello, excuse me, forgive me. I'm, ready to go. And it took them 3.5 minutes to get it together. However, they walk into a classroom, some of those teachers I observed walk into a classroom, they're not prepared, and they expect the children, and remember, these are preschool children, so 3 to 5, they expect them to be on the ball, get with it, and they themselves could not. So I wanted to prove that point because so often we expect from our children things that we ourselves cannot produce. So please be mindful of that when you set expectations. Okay. Include your children in family decisions, even small ones. Actually, include them in decisions about themselves, what they can wear, what, like anything that you can do to give a child autonomy, anything that you can do to make them feel that they're part of, that's going to help them. Yes, it's even going to help them with communication, right? Because too, when they're making choices, they're communicating to you, right? So that's just another way you're expanding their communication. All right. Um, So all behavior communicates something, right? So no matter what it is, our job is just to figure out, be a scientist, which is why I created and I'll show you later, the Behavior Detective Journal, because it helps you get curious. It helps you look at behavior from a different lens, right? So when a child does something, and I know it happens so often, and then it's embarrassing when you're in public and you're just trying to stop it, you know what? Stop worrying about what the people say, right? The people out there who are looking at you and judging you. Please focus on your child and what you can teach them in the moment, what you can learn from them in the moment, right? I know it's difficult. It's not possible to teach your child really when they're heightened, when they're escalated, when they're having a tantrum. However, if you remain calm, you're teaching them, right? You're teaching them calm. When you're stressed, then it gets, when that embarrassment, that stress, everything that actually conveys to them that you're not feeling safe. So now they're feeling even more unsafe. So when you calm, take exaggerated deep breaths, because we have these visual motor neurons, mirror neurons, motor, because we have visual mirror neurons, what you do, your child is going to imitate. So if you take exaggerated deep breaths, and if you just let them know that you're there and you're calm and relaxed, that's going to help them de-escalate. And the people watching, to heck with them, because they don't know, like, they're judging. What would they do in your position? Right? I've had to literally block people from intervening when in the community with families because they felt they knew better what to do, giving a child a candy or whatever when they're in the middle of a meltdown in a parking lot. So the goal again is not to reinforce that behavior, it's to reinforce calm. Okay. Now, and just some of the ways, some of the things that your child's words might say, your child's behaviors might say. So a meltdown, they're overwhelmed and they just need whatever it is to stop, right? They may need to be in a different place or just have, stimuli removed from the area. If it's safe to move them from from that place where they are, then do so. Right. So, and then if it's not, just sit beside them. If they allow you to hold them and breathe deeply. If they don't allow you to hold them, or if they want you to sit a little ways away, respect that, honor that, just make sure that they're safe. A child who's reaching for you and pulling you, they're telling you they want something. And instead of making it, like for instance, I was working with a family recently and the child could just go into the fridge and get whatever they wanted, which meant that they weren't motivated to communicate, right? So we want to set up situations to motivate children to speak, right? So give them so if they want something from the refrigerator, put pictures on the refrigerator of the things that they like that are in there so that they can just pick that picture and hand it to you. All right. Or point to the picture so you know. So that way you're encouraging communication. Yes, it may look a little whatever, but for right now in the beginning, it's, if that's the easiest way to get it done and to give them a way to communicate, then please. Right. If they turn away, they're telling you not right now, or that's too much, or, I don't want to do this. I don't like this. So all of the just these subtle things, and avoid forcing them, right? Because if your child was speaking, right, if they were using words, you would probably honor if they said no. So that turn away or that pushing, whatever, that's no. So respect and honor that, please. Okay. So reading the signs, right? So look at their posture, right? Do they look stressed? You know, are they children who move a lot to show their feelings before the words, right? And I always say, for instance, like if I can't think of what I want to say, I'm usually like doing something like this, or like, what was it? Clenching my hands or whatever it is. I'm trying to remember what my thought was. So just take a look at their body, read their body language to determine, okay, what it is they're trying to tell you. Are they crouched? Are they, are they like hugging themselves? What is it? And for every child, so two children may use the same body movement to mean totally different things. So one of the ways that you do that, you try to figure that out to be a detective, is what happened before. And actually, my behavior detective journal will really help you out with that. So, and I believe you received a free 7-day journal. We've created up to a 90-day. We have a 30 and a 90-day journal to help you with that. So what it does, you look at the antecedent, what happened before the behavior, right? So that way you can determine patterns, so then you can decode what your child is saying, right? And so what is it? Because again, two children tantrum, totally different reasons, right? So we want to be aware and mindful of what your child is saying and how that posture might look different under different circumstances. Okay. Sound. Do they hum, cry, like, right? Like, are there vocal patterns like, that, does it mean something? I remember one of my mentors was working with a young man. She shared this with me. Excuse me. And he was non-speaking, and what they developed a game, and he liked to have his knees tickled, and they called them mums. So when he said he wanted his knee tickled, right? So what are they saying? What are they doing? Actually, I'll talk about that when we get to gestures, right? Their gaze, where do they look? How long? Right? So if they're looking at something intently, they're probably telling you, I want that thing, right? Um, or I'm interested in that. Do they maintain the gaze on the thing, or is it just fleeting? So maybe it's not that important to them, right? If you present them with something and they fix their gaze on it, they may want it. It may be something that they want. If they look at it and turn away, then you're like, oh, maybe they are not so interested in that thing. Okay. Gestures, right? So are they reaching? Are they pointing? Are they pulling you somewhere, right, for requests? One of the young men I work with, the parents recently deciphered what he meant by this iPad, right? Because think of you're opening the thing. So he would do this when he wanted his iPad, and they're like, oh my goodness, we don't know what he's saying. So now they know, right? So really important that, again, be a detective, write these things down so that you can see the patterns, you can figure out what's happening with your child. Because again, what we've learned is that behavior is lawful. There's always a reason for it. Behaviors don't just happen willy-nilly. A lot of times people will say, oh, we didn't, it just happened out of the blue. Or, and okay, like for instance, this one child would just go up to somebody and hit them. And everybody's like, the child was just sitting, nobody did anything. That child had done something the week before he hit that one child, and he remembered, and then he had the opportunity to. So now here he is, retaliating because of what happened that week, because he remembered that event, right? So there's always a reason. It's never just, oh, out of the blue. And yeah, okay. So be a detective. And if you want, we can send you a copy. Well, actually, I think everybody got a copy of the 7 Day Journal. And I'll be sure to have one included. Actually, we'll have a link included in the email with the replay to send you the, to send you, to give you access to the journals, should you choose to purchase the 30 or the 90 day. Okay. One of the best ways, so and I always say, so get on your child's physical level, right? So that they can see your face, and they get your facial expression, your body language. Because when you're standing, what are they seeing, right? Belly button down, or knees or ankles, something that doesn't give them any information about communication. They can hear, but they're not seeing all the subtle nuances of communication, right? Your facial expression, your body language. And I would ask you maybe to exaggerate some of these things a little bit, right? So when you're happy, like, oh my goodness, like you're happy, you're smiling, you're excited. Avoid yelling in anger, because then that really sends the wrong message. Right. So what I always often say is, when you're excited, your voice is up here. Yes, yell when you're excited. When you're upset, then make it monotone. If you like, instead of yelling at your child, bring your voice down to monotone. Because the yelling, it tells your child that you're out of control. It actually is you having a tantrum. It's you modeling a tantrum. And I say that with all respect, because this is a reformed yeller. I used to yell all the time. And then my son came home and he's like, Mom, Auntie Grace scares me when she's upset. I was like, what do you mean, baby? How does she scare you? Because she speaks so softly and slowly. She doesn't yell. My yelling did nothing. And not that I wanted my child to be afraid. However, my yelling told him that I was out of control. He didn't care. He didn't listen. It meant nothing to him. Right. So, really important that we honor and respect our children by not yelling at them. Right. And connection comes first. Right. So, the words, the symbols, the communication, that will come after. So the one child that, one of the children, I've worked with many over the years, that I've worked with, I walked into the home, 2-year-old, not speaking, and I got on the floor and just started, seeing things at his level. So whatever he looked at, I looked over at it and I would make a comment. Then I noticed he was looking at a balloon. And so I went to the balloon and I pulled it down. I said, down, 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 down. And then I lit it up. I said, up, 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 up. And after me doing this, like, I don't know, maybe 10 times, he said, up, up, up. And of course, you can imagine how excited, the family was, because he said his first words. That's because, first of all, when I come in, I'm relaxed. I assume competence. I get to the child's level and observe what's happening with them. Right. Now, I'm not saying that your child will ever talk. However, that doesn't even matter, right? They may never use words. And forgive me if I've used this example before, because I thought I was recording earlier and I wasn't. So I may or may not have said this already. However, I read about 2 young men, and I'm sure they're not the only 2, who graduated from a university with degrees in engineering, both of them non-vocal. So it speaks to competence, right? The child thinking, and the parents believed that they could. which instill the I could in the child, right? And then they do, right? Um, I worked with a family, actually a couple of them who I've recently heard back from. It's been years. I think I first started with this one young lady when she was 2, and now she's going into high school. Oh my gosh. So anyway, she is still not speaking. However, she uses a device, an AAC device, and she, enjoys swimming lessons and tennis and going to her brother's games and all of that. And, they joke a lot about things, and, it's just really fun. So, again, speaking doesn't mean that not speaking doesn't mean that your child is not thinking and they don't have the means to communicate, right? And this mom was really good about connecting and doing things and engaging with her child. She, like, a lot of times, when therapists walked in, parents usually walk out, and she was one of those. And because I refuse to have parents do that when I work with them, and when I work with parents remotely, I have them put in earbuds so that I'm with them. I'm with you in the journey, going through the thing, instructing you and guiding you through it, while you have like something that I can see, maybe position your phone somewhere so, I can help you through in the process. So, yeah, so she was always present and picked up on everything and just continued with the strategies that she learned. And yeah, and today her child is doing super awesome. Academically, she's excelling. And, she's just a happy young lady. So even though she's not vocal, all right, she's not speaking. Okay. Follow their lead, please. I always tell people, get into your child's world. So then when you get comfortable in their world, then they're more likely to come into yours. Right. So, like I was telling you with the young man, I got on the floor and focused on what he was focusing on. And honestly, if he was tapping on something, I tapped on it too. And then I talked about the sound that it made. Oh, we're tapping, and listen to that. It sounds like whatever, or, and compare taps, like tapping on different things and the sounds, and just make it a learning experience for your child, making everything a learning experience for your child. Right. Super important. Right. And then we always want to replace, the whatever the behaviors are, right? So like, it just brought to mind a young man I worked with who would hit his head every time to show displeasure or whatever. And honestly, it sounded like his head was splitting open. However, and yes, he was 42 years old, and he was able to learn. So, because again, always assume competence, because what happened, the way he told me he wanted me to, because everybody fed him and he insisted that I feed him. And I said, well, I know you can feed yourself, because I could, like, his limbs, he could move them, and I could tell there was nothing impeding him from feeding himself. So, but I always like to test things out a little bit. So he was eating. So he moved the food to me to feed him, and I moved it back to him, and he moved it to me, and I moved it back to him. Then he just picked it and started to eat. And everybody looked at me like, oh my gosh. And these people knew him longer than I had, right? I had just started there. It was at a vocational rehab place that he went to. And yeah, so he fed himself. And when I went home with him, I said the same thing to his caregivers. Please don't feed him, because what if they're not able to feed him one day, right? The goal is independence to their ability. And then it takes one thing off your plate. It empowers them, because now he doesn't have to wait for somebody to feed him, right? He can just go ahead and feed himself. And, there was this one young lady I worked with, and she was in her 30s. She was also non-vocal, non-speaking. and we were toilet training, and she would sit on the toilet and squeeze until she produced something and cheered for herself. And, sadly though, the family would rather, it was easier for them to change a diaper. And they decided not to move forward with toilet training. But I thought that was doing her a disservice. And I get it. Parents are stressed. But then it would have taken that one thing off the parent's plate. And then it would have instilled the confidence in her because she was so excited every time she produced something. And I feel like she was robbed of that feeling of, not having to wear a diaper and being able to just sit on the toilet. Right. Yeah. So let me go back to the joint attention. Notice what they are already interested in, right? Don't redirect it, because so often a child is playing with something and we feel, oh, they've been playing with it for 10 minutes. So let's switch it up. It's like, no, just leave them. Because then when they start to, oh, I don't want this, like they're playing and for short amounts of time, then we're like, well, why don't they play with, something else? Let's not focus on us and what we want, right? And how we feel it should happen. Allow your child to show you, right? So join them on their terms at their pace. And honestly, like if the child is just, rubbing something, making lines on something, imitate that. If they're hand flapping, oh wow, look how that my hand is with the light, how it plays against the light, or whatever it is. Just come up with something to say when you're doing the thing. Right? They're going to look at you and like, why are you doing that? And then they're more likely to do, when you imitate them, they're more likely to imitate you. Right? And comment on what they're doing instead of quizzing them. Oh my gosh. I learned that lesson a really hard way. And it was actually a mandatory thing. I had to do an assessment. I had to administer an assessment with this young man, which meant I had to ask him questions. And I always tell parents, stop interrogating your child. However, in this instance, it was important that I did that. However, what I did though, because he started to get frustrated, because again, that one part of the assessment that asked questions that required him to answer, he started to get frustrated. And so I started to ask, there was somebody else in the room. So I started to ask them the question, and then he actually answered it because now the pressure was off him, right? So stress will do a lot. So, and he was actually just learning to vote, to, speak. Um, and we didn't want to discourage that by always making life an interrogation, like a job interview where we're asking them all the things instead of allowing them to share with us, right? Even vocal children, the words don't always come to them, right? So they may engage in a challenging behavior because they could not think of the words, right? And words don't always come to us, right? So let's be okay with that. All right. So five simple strategies to try today. Okay. So we talked about it before. Get down to your child's eye level and then start communicating with them. Imitate them, copy their sounds, their actions. It tells them that you're listening to them. So whatever sound they make, repeat that back and expand on it. Right? So if it's a blah, 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 oh, blah, 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 oh, wow, really? Blah, 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 blah. I had no idea. My goodness. I would have not thought of that. I mean, just have a conversation about whatever it is that they said to you. And it's funny because one of my bestie's children, she's now an architect. She's a grown woman. However, when she was just starting to speak, I went to the house and she said, blah, 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 blah. And I said, blah, 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 blah. Oh, goodness, blah, 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 blah. And she said, she repeated the thing. And again, I repeated it. And she looked at me and said, I said, and she went back, blah, 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 blah. But those were her first words, which was really funny. I just looked at her like, oh my goodness, girl. So, yeah. Narrate. So I know I've said all these things before. I kind of go ahead of myself. So describe what's happening, right? In short, simple language, what is going on? Like if something drops and your child said, "Oh, that was loud, wasn't it? I know that pot falling to the floor, it was so loud. It startled me too." And if it startled them to the point where they cry, just hold them and let them know you're there. Don't prevent sounds from happening because we're not going to always want it to be a big loud sound, but you never know when a big loud sound is going to happen. So slowly desensitize children from sound if they have sound sensitivities. Right. Pause and wait. So you tell your child something, wait about 10, 15. Honestly, depending on your child. Some children you may have to wait, it may only be a few seconds. Others, it could be a minute. And then like, oh, this is the answer, right? Now, I wouldn't wait a minute. I would give them the response if it's, say, 10, 20, 30 seconds, because we don't want them to get frustrated either, right? So it's okay to give them the answer and then have them repeat it to you. So then they're practicing that. And again, that answer could be in the form of a picture, whatever it is, a sign, a gesture, right? I just have like, I redo the scenario and then have the child and then, kind of give them the answer so that they feel confident. Like, oh, wow, yes, I did it. So offer choices. Now, not a whole lot, right? I had a parent was like, her child would only wear certain things and would have really difficult time, if there was something else that was recommended or, suggested by the parent. And so she'd just have her stand in front of the closet. And I said, no, just pick two things, three at the most. Because then, I mean, I have suffered from analysis paralysis. So imagine children, they haven't been on this earth as long as we have. So they, you know, it can be challenging for them. You don't want to stand there all day while your child goes through like all the different choices. So two, three at the most, I say. Okay. The myth: using pictures, signs, or devices will make children rely on them instead of learning to talk. And research shows that AAC supports language development and speech development. It gives children more chances to practice communicating successfully. And that goes also for anything, right? If your child is using sign, they're creating neuromuscular pathways. If they're using pictures, it's actually helping them remove the stress, right? Because now they have a way to communicate. It's reducing the stress. So now they're more likely to communicate using words. Right. So in all of those support communication, they don't deter it, they don't discourage it. Like children, Dr. Joseph Garcia, he has a program teaching sign. And he believes that every child should learn sign from birth. And I agree with him. Because what those studies show later on is that children who use sign, their language is richer when they develop, if they ever develop vocalization, then it's actually richer. So a child who learns sign will say, well, a child who didn't learn sign will say, when they start speaking, will say, this is a ball. A child who learns sign will say, wow, it's a ball that bounces high. Just like their language is so rich, it's so full of all these other nuances that are absent in the per the studies. Right. So, and they're not going, and I mean, it's another language to learn, which is super awesome. And if you're like, oh, well, I don't want them signing all their lives, when they start speaking, chances are the signs will fall off if that's what you would like. However, if I wish I'd continued sign because now it's like I've forgotten so many and yeah, so. it's just great to have another language under your belt. So they could become an interpreter. How much fun would that be? Okay. So, what is an AAC? So, it's an augmented alternative communication, right? That's what that stands for. And it's just basically any tool that supports communication beyond speech. So, gestures, right? That's our more low tech. We go from the low tech to the high tech because the high tech is an actual device, right? However, your low tech are gestures and signs, right? Pictures and boards, right? Picture exchange. So now they're exchanging those pictures for something. They're exchanging the pictures to tell you what they would like to have, to do, to, be, whatever it is. They're using it to fully communicate. So, and again, that will not deter the use of speech, right? It just provides them with a way, right, to relieve stress and frustration because now they can tell you what they want in a different way. However, they can still tell you. All right. So they're core boards, right? So all the pictures are on a board and the child can point to the board, point to what it is that they would like to do or have. Um, and yeah, so it's always there, right? You can just roll it up and take it with you. It's just a super easy, low tech way. And like I have here, there's no charging needed, right? Picture exchange. Again, your child hands you a picture to make a request, right? And you can have the pictures in a book, on a piece of paper, like whatever it is. You can have it on a ring, just different ways that you can have develop a picture exchange system, just one that works for your family. There's no one right way to do anything. The right way is the way that works for you. So the way that's functional, the way that your child is like, okay, you guys are communicating, right? Simple signs that you pair with speech, right, to give an immediate way to communicate. Yeah. So, and yeah, whenever you teach a sign, use the words along with that because children also learn to read lips as well. They're always looking. I mean, if a child can tell whether or not your smile is genuine by looking here to see if your eyes crease, I mean, what else are they noticing, right? They've shown studies with babies where they're actually showing that they use that. They, look towards there to see, is that really a smile or are you faking it? So children are very intuitive. And the more we realize that and respect and honor them in the way that they present in life, the better it's going to be for everyone, right? We're not here to fix children. No child is broken. We're here to help give them ways to communicate, give them ways to express themselves, give them to allow them to express themselves in this world in the way that feels right to them, in a way that they prefer to do so. And it's amazing what you will learn later, right? Like the two young men who, you know, are now engineers and they've never uttered a word. So, because engineering does not require words. There's a story that this lady, Amanda, told me. She's autistic and her daughter's also autistic. And she mentioned her sister who is dyslexic and, she doesn't read. However, she's an engineer. So, she's responsible for the electric grids that were created in Jacksonville, Florida, where I used to live. So it's just really interesting that she shared that little tidbit. And Amanda, like I said, who's autistic, she works in the White House. So she has a PhD. And yeah, so having autism does not prevent anything. You think of, I don't know if you know the story of Dr. Temple Grandin, who was non-vocal. And now, today she is Dr. Temple Grandin. So it's possible that your child can go from non-speaking to speaking. However, there has to be work put in, to get there. And whether or not they do, it does not diminish who they are as a person. All right. So talk with the tool. So, you can point. So when it's bath time, right? You can point and tell them, hey, it's bath time, so you are also using the tool with them. Yeah. And so that way they're learning because you're modeling for them how to use the tool. Right. And we call that language aided. Um, aid, Aided language stimulation, right? So you show them how it works before expecting them to use it. Because everything that we do, we model first, right? Our children are always watching us. I worked with a young lady who told her mom, she's like, I see everything you do, mom. Because mom was like, oh, she's autistic, she's not paying attention. And she may not always be looking, she's noticing everything, right? So model more than you require them to use, because it's just like you don't limit what you say to what you want your child to learn in the moment, right? So do the same thing when you use the tools, right? Whether it's the core board or the packs or whatever it is, use more, right? We don't limit. Or one of the things that I would rather people not do, it's like when they speak to autistic children, they kind of truncate the sentences, right? Instead of using a full sentence, they will, just use a couple of words. Like, just use the sentence. They need to hear all the words. They need to hear as many words as possible, because what your child hears is what they're going to say. And if you speak to them in third person, they're going to start speaking in third person. And I always think of the child who goes to the playground and says, can, we'll call her Rachel. Can Rachel play with you? And then people are like, who's Rachel? And it's like, she's Rachel, but then she's learned to speak in the third person because everybody else speaks in the third person. So, be mindful of what you're modeling is all I'm saying here. Okay. All right. Please, language, weave it into everyday routines, right? You're always narrating, right? What the child is doing. So if you want more, then you're like, oh, I would like more, or whatever it is. Oh, that broccoli is so delicious. And on the point of broccoli, yes, if your child doesn't see you eating broccoli, they're less likely to eat it. Just a little tidbit for feeding, for, food selectivity. So comment on the taste, comment on, oh, it's green and beautiful. Like, so you can talk about the color, the taste, the texture, because then they're learning all these things, right? When you're bathing, the body parts, like when I bathe my little granddaughter, I talk about everything. It's like, oh, we're turning the water and the temperature, and oh, wash your arm. Oh my goodness, we're getting down, your lower arm, your fingers. Let's get between those fingers, the feet between the toes. Just narrate, talk about the whole everything, right? When you're driving, talk about what's happening. And actually, I mentioned that to one of the parents that I was working with, and he finds that his child is much calmer when he narrates what is happening, like while they're driving, and paying attention to. So instead of the child being on a phone, right, we're talking about the scenery, right? When you're playing, again, use as many words as possible. Talk about the colors, the turn taking, request a toy, comment on whatever, the noise it made, the balls going up and down, whatever it is, we're talking about it with using as many words as possible, right? And at bedtime, develop a routine, right? Read a book. And when you're reading that book, point to the words as you do it, as you read them. Talk about, and honestly, the words don't even have to always match what's happening in the picture, because if they're not following along with the words, talk about the pictures. And you can make up a story to make it fun. Oh my goodness, he's flying and he's saying this and he's saying that. And, I used to make up bedtime stories for my kids all the time, and they would ask me to repeat them. Some of them were kind of ridiculous. you know. But yeah, they would. It's like, Mom, remember the one that you told us about the dog dish? Say it again. Because I mentioned to them that if they weren't, um, that it was important that they be successful in life. Otherwise, they'd be eating from a dog dish. Don't judge me. That's just what I said. That was many, many years ago. However, I just make up bedtime stories and songs. So, all right. So this is for my in-person training, so we're not going to do that. So, yeah. All right. So when it's hard, your child refuses to use an AAC tool. um, it's common. Just keep doing it without pressure. Just keep using it, right? Your child they're always interested in what you do. You, as Dr. Ravi Rajaratnam says, are your child's best toy. They are interested in what you're doing. Studies show that your voice is the most beautiful voice to your child, right? As your child's parents, your voices are they prefer your voice over anybody else's. Doesn't matter what it sounds like. So when you do the thing, they're more likely to imitate you, right? And no matter what that thing is, whether it's moaning as you sit on the floor, like my cousin once did. She would, she was with the children and she would moan as she was lowering herself down to the floor. And they started doing that. And she's like, why did these kids always moan when they're getting down on the floor? And then one day she caught herself. She's like, oh, 'twas me. So, yeah. So you want to be mindful because children are always looking. All right. It feels like nothing's working. Oh, let me just go back to the AAC tool. Sometimes they'll think, again, when you make it fun, when you make it more game-like, when you gamify things, children are more likely to, right? Um, and sometimes they may take, and I have here over weeks, not days. Sometimes it may start as weeks, right? I remember a young man I worked with, and he would acquire the skill. Initially, it would take maybe 2 weeks for him to get the thing. And then it took a week. And then it took days. And then it took hours. Then it took minutes. Now it takes seconds. Now he is in a top 10 school as a top 10 student, top 10 school in the country as a top 10 student, and doing amazingly. So, it just takes patience. It takes repetition. It takes being at their level. Takes being in their world and developing that joint attention so that you can develop the trust and the understanding and the comfort with learning, the comfort with being, right? Being with you and being themselves, right? Okay, so it feels like nothing's working. Progress with communication is never a straight line, right? But I want you to focus on the small moments of connection because, again, it starts with connection. And sometimes it's hard to see. Keep going. One day, it's just like this one mom who told me, because I asked her, I was like, listen, where in your day could you spend more time with your child? And she said, you know what? There is that time when I spend talking to my best friend and doing this and doing that. Can you, give that up for your child? And the answer was yes. And then the feedback was, oh my goodness, he's getting it so much faster now because more time is being spent practicing the tools, practicing the skills, right? So that your child can acquire them. This is the tough one, comparing your child to others. Every child is different, right? One of my friends who actually, she started off as a client and now we're friends. Her son didn't speak until he was 7 and just spontaneously started speaking in sentences. And yeah, and then, kept talking about he wanted to be an engineer and this and that. He's into robotics now. But yeah, he started speaking at 7. And now he's in his 20s. She sent me a photo of him. I was like, oh gosh, mustache, beard. Where did the time go? And yeah, so he's doing the thing that he said he wanted to do. So again, it is possible. It just takes work and time. The more time you spend with your child, the more, first of all, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel cared for, right? And to a child, 20 minutes feels like forever. So I'm not asking you to spend hours, which if it goes into hours, yay. If you don't have hours, that's fine. Start with just a few and build on it, because that time builds that connection. And the more you connect, the more you get. That's what parents always ask me, like, come and do your magic. It's not magic, because I spend the time with your child. And when I spend that time with your child, I am only with your child. I'm not on my phone. I'm not attending to anything else. I'm deep in their world. So then they feel comfortable with me, and then they'll do things. Right. So I always encourage, listen, if you've got a BCBA, a speech therapist, somebody that you're working with, try to be there with them so you can observe what they're doing. Your RBT, anybody, be there to observe what they're doing so you can learn from them. A parent mentioned the other day, this was actually in a Facebook group, that they were afraid because their child did all the things when the RBT was there. And they were afraid that when they're, like, oh, what if the RBT, right? That's why it's important for you to learn the tools and the skills, right? We don't live with your child. So the more you learn, the quicker you get us out of your hair. Okay. So before you go, connection comes first, right? So just to recap, always presume confidence and competence and follow your child's lead, please. And any communication tool works better when you model it with them, not just for them. And I'm going to add, any communication tool is better than no communication at all, because no communication will just lead to frustration and lead to challenges. So you want to be very mindful of that. Okay. Now, I have an offer for some of you. I have developed a 12-week reconnection program, right? Specifically for families with autistic children, because connection has to be the foundation of everything that you do. Unless you connect with your child, it's going to be difficult to teach them. It's going to be difficult for them to feel that comfort, for it to activate the prefrontal lobe so that they can enjoy learning and being with you. And the more fun you make it, the better it's going to be for you and your child. And I know it can be difficult. Sometimes I worked with a parent who, she was like, why is it that, my first day at the house, I said, well, what's next on the list of things to do? And she said, brushing teeth, but it's always a challenge. I said, first of all, please don't say that for your child to hear, right? Because then, you're basically activating, it's a challenge in their heads. So I said, hey, time to brush your teeth. And he got up and went to the bathroom. Okay. I didn't ask him. I just said it was time, right? Same thing with the 3-year-old. The mom was like, are you ready to have a bath now? And he said, no. And she looked at him and said, well, you gave him an option. Is bathing an option? And she said, no. I said, okay, then. So I modeled for her. All right, it's time for a bath. Let's see who's going to get to the bathroom first. He got there before me and had his clothes off before we got there. So again, make it fun, make it light, make it interesting. The more stress you have around anything, the least likely that your child is going to engage in that. So my 12-week reconnection, 12-week reconnection program is designed to help you, right? So we'll have weekly coaching, and this is going to be a one-on-one. Actually, we'll have two. We have a one-on-one, family program, right? So it'll be your family, because I believe the whole family, it's important that the whole family learns. So as many family members as possible you want involved. we'll have a session together so people can ask questions, because I hear a lot, when I work with families, you tell them because they're not going to listen to me. So I'm okay doing that. Right. We'll develop a personalized plan for you to better understand your child. Right. Simple approaches to navigate and reduce meltdowns, tools to make sense of behavior with more clarity, support in building communication at your child's pace, daily routines to encourage independence. You'll have my guidance throughout, the challenges, uh, and yeah, we'll use calm supportive language as always. Visual supports will help you with those, strategies for regulation, a way to notice and celebrate progress, and a community of parents who understand, right? And an ongoing guidance from me. All right. Um, Now, what you will experience in this 12 weeks, more calm and ease in daily routines, right? My goal is always to make your life easier, right? We'll get the second guessing out of the way, right? And you'll be able to parent with more confidence, right? Fewer overwhelming situations, because you're also going to learn how to care for yourself. Because, like they say in the airplane, put your mask on first. There's a reason for that. Because if you don't, we're all going down. So please, yeah. You'll develop a deeper understanding of your child. You'll have more connection and shared moments, and progress that feels meaningful and sustainable. All right. So, introductory. Well, when I say introductory, so for the people on this call, right, who we'll send a link to, um, the program is being offered, the family program, for $197 a week. It's regularly $297. Our paid in full option is $1997, with regularly $29.97. So you're getting a big savings here. We'll also include as a gift our 90-day reconnection journal, because that will help you track track your child's behaviors and really give you a good way to get a better understanding. Because you can't treat, it's difficult to treat, you can't treat what you don't understand. So super important. All right. And yeah, so I don't know if there are any questions. However, this is the end of our presentation, and I just want to show you. So this journal that we have created for you, one second. So it's actually a SAT. So you've received the 7-day. So we also have our 90, our 30 and 90-day. They all look exactly the same. They're just different lengths of time. So that you can go through, because it takes time to learn anything new. So with the 90-day, you really get a good grasp of what's happening. And then you use that to develop, when you see the patterns, you can develop a way to treat. So I thank you, everyone, for joining me tonight. Everyone who registered will get the replay. So everybody who attended or just registered will get the replay. And next month, our presentation will be on overwhelm, right? So basically reducing overwhelm and to be a more grounded parent. We'll share tools to help, because I know overwhelm is a big part of parenting autistic children. I hear it all the time. I can't sleep. I've got to sleep with one eye open. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm overwhelmed. We'll do one on exhaustion too after that, because it's really important. Again, self-care is vital to parenting. It's not selfish. As my friend Rosina says, it's self-full. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we'll see you next month, okay, August 27th at 8 p.m.